Hey everyone, Michael Hidalgo here. Thank you for joining us on another FCP Euro DIY. Today we're going to be working on our 2008 BMW 328xi E91. Today we're going to be covering how to replace the rear control arms on the E91 behind me. What's really cool about this job is that this job is going to apply to all your E9X platforms, meaning your E90s, E91s, E92s, E93s, rear-wheel drive and all-wheel drive, all of them with the exception of the M3. The M3 has a little bit of a different setup. So if you have either one of those vehicles, then this video is for you. Today we're going to be using our Lemforder kit that you can find on our site. This includes all four arms for the rear, as well as all the hardware needed to do this job. You have your two upper control arms, you have your trailing arm, and you have your toe links. So pretty cool kit, makes it nice and easy. It's pretty straightforward. You don't have to look for any additional hardware, nuts, or bolts. We typically recommend that you replace these every 80,000 miles. Again, that's going to be dependent on how you drive, but roughly 80K is what these last. Shockingly, the vehicle behind me has 236,000 miles on it, and the arms are original, so we'll show you some gnarly bushings of what a lot of driving and age does to those bushings. A couple things to notice if you have issues with your rear control arms or you're trying to diagnose. A lot of times if you go for an alignment, you'll have trouble getting the vehicle aligned. They'll either tell you the bolts are frozen, they're seized up, sometimes they seize to the inner sleeves of the bushings. Other times what you can experience, which we experienced on this car, is driving straight under hard acceleration. You can feel the rear end kind of squat and get out of alignment, and then the car wants to steer into a different lane. So pretty dangerous. You always want to try to avoid that. And then another easy thing to check is tire wear. If your arms are really shot, you'll see that you have uneven tire wear. Sometimes you'll have some cording on the inside or the outside, depending on how it's wearing. So just a couple things to look out for. But before we get started on this DIY, let's take a look at the tools we're going to need for this job. For this job, you're going to need a couple basic tools, which is nice, starting with, very important, two 18mm wrenches. You're going to need them to counter hold each other. I have a ratcheting one and just a standard box and wrench, as well as a couple different 18mm sockets. And then it helps to have a couple extensions as well. I'm also using a 17mm socket. We're going to need that to get our lugs off the wheels. A couple Sharpies, which I'll show you what you're going to need those for. You have to mark a couple things. And then as far as ratchets, we have a couple 3/8 and 1/2 inch ratchets, as well as two different size torque wrenches. And then some nice to haves for this job is an impact to get your wheels off, some penetrant if you live in New England like we do and everything is nice and rusty, an electric ratchet, and then a hammer in case you have to hit one of the arms out, and a trusty flathead screwdriver in case you have to pry anything out. Now that we've taken a look at the tools we're going to need for this job, let's get started on this DIY. All right, my good people, we are at the car. We're going to get started. Today we're working on the lift. So we have the car up in the air, but if you're working on the ground, be sure you're working safe with jack stands and all that good stuff. To get started, we're going to remove our wheel using a 17mm socket. Now we have the wheel off, we're going to start by working on our upper control arms first, starting with this one right here. You're going to want to remove these two clips that hold your brake sensor cable in place. These are just going to pop off. You can push it down, and it's just going to hang out there for now. From there, you're going to grab your 18mm wrench, or you can use a ratchet, whatever it's easier. And we're going to start by removing this upper bolt by the hub. As you can see, this is a classic New England car. You have all your surface rust from all our winters. Before starting this job, I went ahead and soaked every bolt with a little bit of penetrating fluid, just to make this job a little bit easier. So you might want to consider that and give yourself some time for that to do its job before starting. It's important to note while I do this, I also have the lower control arms supported with a screw jack. If you're working on the ground, you want to use a floor jack to replicate the same thing. That way when these come off, the whole assembly doesn't droop too far. Just using the electric ratchet to speed things up a bit. Now we have our outer bolt done. We're going to go ahead and remove our inner bolt on the subframe end. I'll be taking both of my 18mm wrenches, using one to counter hold while I break free with the other one. Here's our old bolt. And then before you pull out the arm, it's always nice to note the orientation of how it's pressed, just so you put the new one in the same way. If you also mess up, you'll see that they can only go one way. This side has a beveled end that fits into the hub, and this side has a flat end for the bolt. All right. Now that we have our upper arm removed, we're going to go ahead and remove our other upper arm and install in the reverse order, because the only way to get to this inside 18mm bolt is by having the upper arm out. or removing the sway bar, but that's an extra step that we don't need to do. So again, 18mm wrench, I'm gonna break that free. Once you break it free, I like to switch over to my ratcheting side of the wrench and then speed things up a little bit with that. That's out. Now we have our bolt at the hub removed. We can work on removing our nut and bolt at the subframe. Again, using my two 18mm wrenches, I'm gonna start breaking this free. If you have to use some more screw loose penetrant, go for it. Every little bit helps in these jobs. We'll give that a second to do its thing and then come back to it. And there you have it. Bolt on the left, nut towards the front of the vehicle. Note the beveled end on the, dimpled end on the front side of the vehicle. We have a flat end towards the rear of the vehicle. Let's get our new arm and then start reinstalling. One thing I wanted to point out before reinstalling is you will notice these arms do look a little bit different. The stamping changed a little bit over time. However, they are the exact same arm, same size, same component. You'll note you have your beveled in or your dimpled in on one side. You have your two flats on the other end, and then your one flat on the back side. So again, I just wanted to point that out. Don't be concerned if you see that they're not stamped exactly the same, just a newer look. Now we can reinstall our new arm. I'm going to start with the subframe in first and feed my bolt through to line it up back here. Again, all these arms come with new hardware. You always want to reuse new hardware when doing these arms. I'm going to use my wrench to feed my nut in and then start it by hand. With that in there but loose, we're going to work on securing our other bolt that goes through on the hub end. All right, now with our inners done, we can go ahead and start our outer bolt on this. You're going to want to feed it through the arm. And then you're going to want to push on your hub assembly a little bit to line up the threaded portion of the hub end with your bolt. Once you get a couple threads on, then you can go ahead and take your tool, your 18mm, to start threading that in. Now that we've got both our nut and bolt on the subframe end started and our bolt on the hub end started, you're going to want to go ahead and set everything to ride height. You never want to tighten down these bushing bolts when the vehicle is at a full droop on suspension. Otherwise, you're going to put too much tension, rebound tension on the bushings, and or you're going to tear them prematurely, as they're always going to be under a strict load. So again, you want to set everything to ride height and then torque everything down. So I'm going to be using the screw jack to set our ride height, and then I'll tell you what torque specs we're going to need for this. All right, there we are. So I'm going to go ahead and snug these down. You're going to want to torque that to 100 Newton meters. There's 100. And then on these outers, once you hit the 100 Newton meter mark, you have to then give them plus 90 degrees. So what I'm going to do is take a little Sharpie marker, just mark the top, and when I hit the side over here, that'll show me that I've done, or when I've done a quarter turn, that'll give me my 90 degrees right there. And that's going to be about 90 for us on that outer bolt. Now we have to go ahead and torque our inner nut and bolt to 100 Newton meters. I'm going to take my two 18mm wrenches again and start tightening this down. There we go, 100 Newton meters. Now let's work on installing our other upper arm. Now we have our first upper arm installed. Again, this was the second one we removed. Now we can go ahead and install the first one we removed. I like to start by feeding in the end that goes into the subframe first and feeding our bolt through. And then just like before, I'm going to use my wrench and put my nut on the other end so I can feed it in here and have a better shot at starting this bolt and nut together. Now we have that one inner bolt started, we can go ahead and start the one at the hub. And you're going to want to push in on your hub assembly a little bit just to line up the bolt hole for the bolt. Start it by hand. Once you feel that it's going in there correct and it's not cross-threading itself, then you can put a tool on it. Again, we're doing all this at ride height. We're going to go ahead and tighten everything at ride height. So just a reminder, same thing as the other arm, baby. We're going to do 100 Newton meters plus 90 degrees on this outside one. Perfect. Now we're gonna do the same thing as we did on our other side, other arm. We're gonna mark the top and bring it over a quarter turn. That'll give us our 90 degrees roughly. Now we have our 90 degrees on our outer bolt at the hub. Let's go ahead and torque down our nut and bolt at the subframe end. Again, that's going to be torqued down to 100 Newton meters. And then we can move on to the underneath. And now with both of our top arms secured, our last thing left to do is to reinstall our 2 plastic clips that hold our ABS sensor and our brake wear sensor cabling. Something like that. And like that. Awesome. Now let's head underneath the vehicle and do our last 2 arms and wrap up this side. Now that we're underneath the vehicle, we're going to start by removing our trailing arm first. So what I'm going to do is take our 2 18mm wrenches, counter hold, and our ratcheting one. Just break this bottom bolt loose at the knuckle. And then once you get a couple turns on it, if you have one, take an electric ratchet to it. If not, just keep doing the same. These arms don't typically wear per se. They don't have a bushing in them, but they are designed to collapse under a collision or bend before anything else does. So while you can argue there's no wear on it, it does come with the new kit, and it does look nice and shiny compared to what we're taking off. Now with our bottom one undone, we can work on our subframe end and do the same thing. All right. With that out, we can grab our new one and just set it in place loosely. All right, just reversal of the removal. Start with the top one. Line up our hole. Feed our new nut and bolt through. These arms specifically come with their own hardware. So you'll know if you choose to opt out of this on the kit, you will be short these 2 bolts and nuts. Put our top one in. Now we can work on getting our bottom one situated. Now, if you looked at the tool section, you'll notice that I mentioned having a flathead screwdriver for prying, and that's going to come in handy here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use this to kind of line up everything from the other end, but just showing you here on this side so that I can then get my new bolt started. For now, we're going to leave these 2 loose, and now we're going to work on our next arm so that we can tighten everything at right height at the same time and wrap up this side. With our trailing arm in, the last arm to get to is a toe arm. So to start, you're going to want to lift up this little flap here that acts as an access panel for your eccentric bolt. That just folds up. There's a little tab up there that holds it in place. And then on the other side, before we loosen anything up, you're going to want to take a Sharpie or a paint pen, whatever you have. This is just to help you align the car enough so that you can drive it to a alignment shop safely. What I like to do is I take a silver Sharpie marker and I make myself 3 lines. You'll see here, 1 on the washer, and then 1 that reflects its position right on the subframe. And I'll do another one like here, and I'll do another one on the other side. So I have 3. And then I'll show you how I replicate that on our new washer before we tighten everything down. So we have a rough eyeball alignment of how things are going to go. And now with everything marked up and situated for now, we're going to go ahead and take our 18mm wrench. I'm going to use an 18mm socket, and I'm just going to go ahead and break free this nut and hold my eccentric bolt on the other end. With that loose, I'm going to put a electric ratchet on it just to speed things up a little bit. We're going to take this washer off and save it for now and put it to the side. So what's happening right now is the eccentric bolt is seized to the inside sleeve of the toe arm bushing. We've tried penetrating it with some fluid. It's not really giving up, so what we're going to try now is hit it with a little bit of propane heat, and again, try not to hurt any of the bushings around here. So let's give that a shot and see if we can break this bolt out of here. Thank you, fire. Now that we have our upper toe link bolt or eccentric bolt undone, we have this last bolt at the hub to undo. Again, this is an 18mm. All the hardware on this job is going to be 18mm. I'm going to clean this area up a little bit, and then we'll get ready to reinstall our new toe arm. With our old toe arm out, I went ahead and made sure that I'm installing my new one the same way. The pressing of the metal is facing the same direction. You can argue your smooth side faces towards the front of the vehicle, and your channeled side faces towards the rear. I'm going to feed it in, and then start our eccentric bolt on the other side. Look at that. And now with that in place, we can take our new bolt with lock and washer and feed that into the hub. Again, you always want to start these by hand first. You don't want to cross thread anything by accident. And you're going to notice that this has to fold down a little bit towards the bottom of the car just so that you can get this bolt to feed in straight. So now what I'm doing is I've put the old washer back on and I'm putting my new washer over it. And I'm just using the marks on the old washer to mark my new one. So I had a mark there. I had a mark there, and now we can ditch that old washer, install our new one, and then using our 18mm wrench, we're going to spin this eccentric bolt until it lines up with our marks on the subframe. You can see roughly that's kind of what it's going to look like. Again, not perfect, just good enough to get you to the alignment shop. And now before we proceed any further, we're going to get our screw jack back under here. We're going to set the car to ride height, and we're going to tighten both ends on our tow arm and our trailing arm. All right, with everything at ride height, I'm going to snug all my hardware down, and we're going to torque everything. Now we're going to torque this down to 100 Newton meters. Beautiful. Now with our eccentric nut tightened, now we just have to tighten our bolt at the hub. Again, this is just 100 Newton meters. Beautiful. Now let's tighten up our trailing arm and wrap up the side. Just going to snug these up with our electric ratchet to speed things up. And then we're going to torque, same thing, to 100 Newton meters. And then don't forget to put your little flap back over your eccentric bolt. Now with our arms all bolted up, torqued down, everything's good to go, we're going to go ahead and put our wheel back on. Now I'm going to lower the car and torque this down to 88.5 foot-pounds. And there you have it, my good people. Another DIY in the books. Overall, a pretty straightforward job on these E9X platforms. As you can see, the only thing you can run into is if you have a New England car like we do, you have to deal with a little bit of rust and corrosion. So make sure you have a torch around just in case you need it. If you like what you saw in this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments on what we did today, or you want to see anything else related to this car, let us know in the comment box below. And if you like this DIY and you want to see more like them, please consider subscribing. We make new ones all the time. As always, thank you for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.